I'm going through a major life change right now. And I consider myself to be a very confident person. And this major life change has literally rocked my world. And I am in a daily battle with self-doubt, with fear, and maybe you watching at home, you know, you've experienced a time, or you can relate to this idea that you have made a decision. Maybe it's to end your marriage, or it's to change your career, or it's to move across country, or it's to heal yourself, or to not have kids. Or in my case, my husband and I made a decision to sell the family home that we have raised our kids in for 24 years. I've lived almost half my life here. My parents, Lisa, never moved from the home I grew up in. My grandfather was born in the house and died in the house that my mother was raised in on a big farm. Like, this has never been modeled for me. And so when I made the decision, everybody, it felt right. And I knew it was the right decision. But now that we're on the backside of it and we're a couple weeks away from closing and packing this place up, I feel my heart shrinking. I feel these massive, like, hot waves of anxiety. I've felt waves of anxiety that feel like electricity. I don't know what your waves of anxiety feel like, Lisa. Do they feel like electricity, or like this is like lava coming through my body?
It feels like I've got a beating drum in my chest, and it's like, and it almost like vibrates throughout my whole body. That's kind of how it feels to me.
Lisa, I have not felt this anxious and like scared in decades. Decades. And so, you know, you wrote this book, Radical Confidence, and I do not feel radically confident right now. I feel like the Mel Robbins that I know has been knocked on her ass, and I'm wallowing, and I am doing all the things that I know to do. Get up, get moving, don't drink, move your body, reach out to friends, journal, go to therapy. Like, I am so busy. I think almost trying to outrun the fear.
Yes.
And I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but what were you going to say? Because I just saw you go.
Yeah, literally. So there's this thing I call in the book about squirrels, like filling your life. I think it was the movie Up, where the dog has, like, you know, where the dog sees a squirrel and it runs off, and then it sees another squirrel and it runs off over here. It's like they become distractions, but almost the distractions help you not to look at the realities of what is actually happening within you. So you even said you're filling your days up so much with almost these strategies that you're trying to overpower the actual thing. You're trying to beat it out versus actually letting it speak, letting it have a voice, and then addressing it with no judgment in yourself. Because that's the point though, right? You even said, I haven't felt anxiety in years. And so in those moments, I actually go, oh, she's back again.
Are you kidding me? Because I'm literally like, what the fuck is this bitch doing here? I thought I got rid of you in law school and I was 20. What? Like, and so I'm like, get out of here. And now I'm going to like get busy and clean the house and do this and on and on and on. And radical confidence is something else. And it's something that I don't think I've actually ever practiced. So you and I know the same, and I want to unpack this using my story. Okay. Because I know that there are times in your life where you make a decision. You're going to break up with that person, or you're going to actually say yes to their proposal. You're going to change your job. You lose somebody you love. So it might not even be a decision. It's something that's happening and you don't want it to be happening. You get a diagnosis. It's terrifying, right? In my case, you know, I make this decision. I think I'm confident about it, but the second the decision becomes real, I feel like I'm now a no. I feel like I signed up to go skydiving. And I was all excited when we were on the ground, Lisa, because you were going. And then Lisa's all excited. So I get excited and this is great. And Lisa and I are going skydiving. And Lisa gets on the plane and she's off. And I'm standing down there like, this is exciting. And then I watch Lisa go out and I'm like, oh my God, she made it look so easy. And then the plane pulls up and I'm like, it's my turn. Okay, I'm in. I strapped to the person. I got my thing on. And now I'm like, I don't want to do this. don't let me out. Like, I'm like, oh, no. And I'm like backing away. And that's where I am right now in my life.
Yeah.
Right now. And so how can I face this situation and find or use radical confidence to help me navigate through one of the literally most emotional decisions I've made in my life?
So, girl, thank you for being so vulnerable and honest. And in situations like that, the thing that I will say a lot is give yourself grace. Like, give yourself grace that maybe some part, right? You're trying to push her out. Like, no, oh my God, I thought I got rid of her. I tried that too. I really did. And anytime I tried something new, anytime I made a different decision in my life, she would come back again. And I would beat myself up over the fact that she would come back again. And so I realized, what if I just embrace her? What if I'm just like, oh, okay, you're back here again. That's okay. But remember, I'm not going to let you drive my life, and kind of just reminding yourself that instead of beating yourself up, allowing her to come back and say, why is she back again? What is she trying to tell me? So taking the negative voice that is the bitch and then saying, how on earth can this be my best friend? And maybe she's
how the hell do you do that? Because when that fear comes up, Lisa, it is terrifying. Like when you hear that negative voice, and the negative voice in this scenario, I know it's so stupid, but I literally go, you're selling this house in suburban Boston because you're lonely. Your kids have left. You've been under construction somewhere else. You work here alone. You live here alone. This chapter of your life is ended. You are a ghost in an old chapter. It is time to move on, woman. I know that. It is time for something bigger. I know that. But when this fucking bitch shows up, she's like, you think you were lonely in suburban Boston? Wait till you live on a mountain, woman. You're not going to see anybody. Oh, you thought it was hard to work virtually during the pandemic outside of Boston? Wait till you try to launch a podcast alone on a mountain, woman. You're fucked. Like I literally, what have you done? What have you done? You screwed it up. You screwed it up. How do you have this no BS method. You talk a lot about the why. How do we use these tools in moments like this to find our radical confidence, Lisa?
Yeah. So girl, you've got to know your why. You have to be so ingrained in that anything that comes your way can pull you through. So the negative voice, the fear is the ego speaking. The ego is trying to say like, hey, I'm here. Like, you don't want to do that because you're right. Everything you just said, but Mel, what if you don't have Wi-Fi up there? So it's trying to protect you to say, don't do it. Don't do it. Because
you just taught me something, Lisa, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, please.
When I hear the word ego, I always think strength. Or I think being conceited. I've never thought about the ego and the voice in your head as being something there to protect you when you're scared.
Yeah.
Never thought about it that way. So if I can understand this, and I would love to hear where you've done this in your life, where you've been paralyzed, that you have to, one of the key principles of practicing radical confidence, particularly in moments like ones I'm going through right now, is you have to, attach yourself to why do you want to jump out of this airplane? Why? What is the bigger thing that you're up to in life that caused you to be pulled to do this, to long to do this? Have you ever had this moment for yourself?
Absolutely. So multiple times actually in my life. So going from being the stay-at-home wife, supporting my husband for 8 years, cooking, cleaning for him, then helping Quest, like my husband, I'm a good Greek wife, I'll help you, and not realizing it would grow at 57,000%. And in that growth, having transitioned into, oh my God, maybe I love business. Maybe this is actually something I love. The idea of tearing apart my identity of being the good, supportive wife, this identity that I was told my whole life I would end up being, I got accolades for it. I got pats on the back for it. I was getting all the validation of what a great wife I was. And yet it wasn't fulfilling me. And yet it wasn't giving me the life I actually wanted.
I hear you.
So, and it wasn't, I heard something else. I wasn't sure if
that was I thought like you got somebody calling you.
No. So if it's not it, oh, shit, what was my line?
If it wasn't, I
don't
know where we are here. Okay, gotcha.
I can do, yeah. So I was holding my identity to the validation that I was getting. And yet, as Quest was growing more and more, I started to love it. I loved the challenges. I loved seeing what I was made of. And now here I was in a moment where my voice is telling, well, Lisa, you don't know anything about business. Are you really going to give up this identity, the thing that gives you the accolades, the things that give you the validation? What if you fail? What if you make a transition and you try this business thing and you suck at it? And what happens if you're god awful at it? Where are you going to get your validations from? Where are you going to get the pats on the back from? Where are you going to get the feel that you have now? While it doesn't make you happy, it didn't make me happy, but the validation and the feeling I got from doing it becomes the velvet handcuffs. So knowing that, I had to say, what is the life I want? So attaching yourself to the why, attaching yourself to this goal emotionally. So I started to realize I had a thing over here where I was supporting my husband and I was feeling good about it. But on this other side, in pursuing the hard things, in overcoming obstacles, Quest became a mission. It became, I was actually helping women. Like we were getting letters from women who were in the anorexic community. And they said, this one woman specifically, I remember, she sent us a letter. She said she was in the hospital at like 40 pounds, Mel. She was on her deathbed. Oh, God. And she said, thank you for bringing Quest into my life. You have now made me okay with calories again. Now, when you hear that sort of thing and you attach yourself to the why, that when you step in, all these hard things to do actually deliver on this why, I now know I have to make the change. So I know my why now. I know that I really want to change from being the supportive wife into helping build Quest.
All right. So let me unpack mine. So I, like you, it's interesting because your story went from you were the supportive wife for 8 years, supporting, as many of you know, Impact Theory, that is part of the Impact Theory Global brand that Lisa is the co-founder and president of, the Impact Theory Studios. But a lot of people know Tom, your husband, because he started, that show. You guys have 7.5 million people in your Impact Theory audience. And so you supported Tom for 8 years. You guys are co-founders then of Quest Nutrition. And so you went from bucking all of the stuff that you were told to do, being raised in a Greek Orthodox family. You're going to get married, you're going to support your husband, you're going to have children, and discovering that you love business. Yeah. And the impact that you were making and the fulfillment that you felt became your why. Correct. The why you were going to not do what society and your upbringing and what you thought you were supposed to do.
Yeah.
I have something that's almost like the reverse. As the more successful I've become, the lonelier I've become, and the more stressed out I've become. And my why is to create more peace. It's to create more ease. It's to create more fun. It's to be much smarter about my business so that I can accelerate and magnify the impact without accelerating and magnifying the stress. And a big piece of me deciding that it was time to sell this house is because I race back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and jump on planes, and I am never anywhere, which is why I'm lonely. And it's just like it probably scared you to not do what you had been told you should do and had been doing forever. It scares me to slow down and to approach business very differently so that I can have all the things that I really want, which is more time with my family, more peace, and a bit of separation between the empire and the impact that I love building and the peace that I need and the connection that I need in my personal life. And when I say that, I'm like, fuck this house. I'm out of here. Back this shit up. Let's go.
Right? See? Yeah, it all depends in the moment, right? So for instance, if we even know hangry is a thing, right? You don't eat, you get mad, and all of a sudden you may say something you shouldn't have said. So if we understand that one little thing by not eating has an impact on how we feel about ourselves, now think about all the other things that come along with what you're doing. You're having to look back at 25 years or however long you've been there, right? So all of that is emotional, of course. And so now it's like, how do you separate why you're trying to do it with the emotion you're feeling?
Oh, I love this, because here's what I just got from this. The grief is completely appropriate.
1,000%, Mel.
The fear is not necessary. Like the fear is something through radical confidence. If I'm able to separate the process of grieving, which is an emotional process that you cannot attach a timeline to, that is so healthy and so important. And it's also all about the love and the loss and like all of it. And you can't outrun it. And that is something that's really a big part of this major change, is the grief. But what I've done is I've collapsed the fear of the unknown and my lack of confidence in knowing whether or not this next thing is going to be successful. So if you look at that, the why, right? So you've got the why. So everybody, the first piece of advice from radical confidence, if you are in the low, if you're in a big major decision, if you're scared about something, you did not lose your confidence because it's in you. We're going to tap into it. And if I'm hearing you correctly, step one, when you hit that moment, is you got to attach yourself to your why. Mm-hmm. And my why is that I want to make a greater impact and have much more peace and ease in my personal life and more time with family and friends. And that's why I've got to remove this variable of a house that my entire family has outgrown, even though I don't want to give up the memories. Like I'm still walking around here because it keeps me close to my kids. Mm-hmm. And then you're also saying, though, and this is the really important part that I've actually never heard anybody say. I'm sure lots of people have said it, but I've never heard somebody say it in a way that I really understood it, Lisa. And that is that the fear is your ego trying to protect you from something you're scared of.
Yeah.
And when you feel the fear, you need to detach it from everything else. And you need to turn towards that fucking fear. You write this chapter. I'm so glad we're talking about this, because this is my favorite chapter, everybody. This is make your negative voice your bitch and then turn it into your BFF. And I'm telling you right now, my negative voice is my bitch right now. Like I didn't make it my bitch. It is bitching at me.
Yes.
It is scaring me. And so the voice that's scaring you going, I can't do this. I'll never make friends. If I was lonely here in Boston, then I'm going to be really lonely on a mountain. What the fuck have I done? Just screw it. Bitch, 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 bitch. My daughter has this right now. She got into this great program in London and she's pursuing her dream of being a singer-songwriter. And she's 5 days away from leaving. And her fear, so her ego is going, you're not going to like it. You're going to be homesick. This is going to be terrible. Blah, 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 blah. So what do you do when that fucking bitch is bitching at you?
You literally listen to her. You go, all right.
I don't want to listen to her.
All right, Mel, she's
I've been listening to her and I'm crying in my bed. How do I stop listening to her?
Okay, here's what I love it. Okay, so here's the thing. Just like a partner, your spouse, your best friend, yes, she's going to tell you the hard things. You don't sometimes want to hear it, right?
I ignore Chris. I'll listen to you. So
okay. All right, there you go. So your friend is telling you, like, hey girl, you may want to watch out for this. Hey, you know what? This actually could be a bad thing. Like, what if you are lonely? So now I go, oh, she's actually a friend trying to warn me of something that may happen. Now, as my friend, because she cares about me, because she doesn't want me to get my ego dented. She doesn't want me to be embarrassed. She doesn't want me to feel shame or guilt. So she's warning me. So if she's warning me, hey, you're going to be lonely. Okay, great. Thank you for letting me know. Maybe I will feel lonely. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to have radical confidence and I'm going to put something down. So let's say you have a list, right? On the one side, what is that bitch telling you? And now if it was your BFF, what is she trying to help you come up with a strategy or a tactic to mitigate that when it happens? So maybe, here's the thing, Mel, maybe you do get lonely. That's very real. And now here's the thing. What are you going to do about it? You're going to say, all right, I've got a game plan. I've said, I've pinged Lisa and I've told her, hey, look, I'm actually really worried about going. I may feel lonely. Do you mind that you become my, my partner in crime or whatever word you want to be? It's like, okay, yeah, of course, Mel. So now you can go by the fear and you go, cool, thank you, fear. You've just warned me of something that may deter me from loving the new decision that I've made. And so taking that down, piecing it together, everything you just said. So even your daughter, it's like, well, I may feel, what if I get there and I miss my family? Okay, great. That's actually a very valid fear. What are you going to do if you miss your family? Instead of wallowing, like you said, right? And it's like, oh my God, I miss my family. You go to your cheat sheet, which is your radical confidence cheat sheet. And you go,
everybody, I'm making mine right now.
Oh, I love
I'm making mine right now. I'm turning this conversation into a coaching session for myself, which, by the way, I would have paid thousands and thousands of dollars for by the minute. Because if you can get me out of bed, not wallowing and terrified of this big decision, then that changes everything. And I think you kind of just did.
Yeah, taking that critic, right? Because I tried to stop the critic in my head. I tried to, but I couldn't. So I'm like, okay, what if I can turn the critic into my coach? And that's exactly what you've just written down. The critic is saying this, but your coach is telling you what you can do if you're fearful of this. So you've really taken this thing that used to be crippling, it was your kryptonite, and now you've made it your superpower. And the other thing I really want to hammer home, Mel, you said it and it's so beautiful, is the grief thing. This is so powerful because I think we live in a world where we think just because we're moving towards something we love, that we don't have the right to mourn the life we are leaving behind. And when I decided I didn't want children.
I was just going to ask you about this.
Okay.
When you said that, I literally was like, I have to ask her, because you on social media are such an empowering voice for anyone who has decided that they're not going to have kids. They just not what they want in terms of the way that you want to live your life.
Yeah.
So is there grief for you? And how did you come to that decision for yourself? And why are you personally so vocal about the decision?
Yeah, thank you, Mel. And even in my decision talking, it really isn't whether I think people should have kids or not, right? It's really about when you think you are going to have one life and you change your mind. So I married Tom thinking I was going to have 4. Like literally, I told him I wanted 4 children because I come from a big Greek family. I always loved the big grand family. And 10, 15 years in, when I realized I love entrepreneurship, I have a chapter called Open Up the Can of Worms and Embrace the Ick. Now, open up the can of worms is me asking myself the hard question. Do I actually want children? And so many of us hide from asking ourselves that question, or a hard question, because the ick is what comes with the mess that is the hard question. So let's say, for instance, do I actually want children? And the answer is no. The ick is now I have to talk to Tom, my husband, who may still want children. Now what happens, Mel? Is he going to say, well, babe, you promised me. And so it's I want children or we have to get a divorce. I don't know. Right. That's the ick that you have to face when you ask yourself the hard question.
What was the moment when you were like, wow, I actually realized I don't want 4 kids? How did you get to that decision?
So do you ever feel like it's a whisper in your head first?
The house was.
Yeah.
It like becomes something. Keep going.
So it becomes this little whisper that maybe we try to ignore because it's uncomfortable. It's like, I don't want to ask myself this hard question, because if I say to myself, to your point, do I really want to live here anymore? Now you have to deal with all the emotion that comes behind it. You have to tell your kids. What if your kids are upset? Now you've disappointed your kids. What if your husband doesn't want to move? Right? There's so many things that come with you saying, maybe I don't want to live here anymore, that ends up people living in the same house that they didn't want to live in for 10 years. So it's making sure that you ask yourself the hard question, listening to the answer, which is the whisper, right? So the whisper is, do you still want to live here? Do you still want to live here? And in fact, let me back up. So you listen to the whisper and then you let it speak.
Do you remember the first moment and where you were when it went from a whisper to a speak?
The interesting thing is someone else saw it in me before I did. I didn't want to acknowledge the whisper. And one day, one of Tom's business partners turned around and says, Lisa's not going to have children. Because he had seen me go from a supportive wife to now business. And I was like, no, of course I'm going to have kids. I'm just going to do this entrepreneurship thing until I'm ready. Right. And so he turned around and he was like, Lisa's not going to have kids. And it was so upsetting. It was so upsetting. And I went to Tom. I was like, I can't believe that he said it. Who does he think he is? Why the hell did I have such an emotional reaction to it? That was the thing. I was like, because Tom even said, babe, why does it bother you? Who cares what other people think? And I was like, why does it bother me? And it was because I was ignoring the whisper and he just called it out. Because he saw in my actions how much I was thriving in business. He saw, but because of my belief system, the belief system that I had as a Greek woman, I was going to have children. I didn't want to ask myself the hard question. So when he said that, I actually stepped back and said, why do I believe that I'm going to have kids in the first place? Like with no judgment, assess my belief system. And once I started to write down literally almost like, what are the first things that come to your mind? And I was like, all right, legacy, like chatting something out like as quickly as possible. So I was like, all right, legacy. And I was like, well, what does legacy mean? So I wrote it down, legacy. Oh. What does legacy mean to me? All right. Well, I said legacy because to me, it was about having children to pass on your wisdom. That was what my dad used to tell me. And I was like, but do I actually believe that? And I'm like, well, a legacy to me could be, having, making a mark on your life now so that when you're gone, you're remembered. All right. Do I actually need to give birth to my own children to do that? Oh, no, I actually don't need to. And then it was like, why else do I believe that I want to have children? I really love the idea of having a little Tom running around, a little mini Tom. I love the idea of having a daughter that one day I could help her mindset not be crippling like the mindset that I had growing up. So all these emotions were real, which is why I didn't want to necessarily say, but is this worth, right? Is this something that I really want to have children over? And so once I looked at that and I said, you know what? I actually still want that. But what I want more than that is the life that I'm experiencing in business. And in that moment, Mel, going back to your grief, I realized I had to mourn the life I was leaving behind. It didn't mean that I didn't want the life. It didn't mean that some of the decisions that I was making weren't going to be heartbreaking to me. But I realized that what I wanted more than having children was actually not to have children.
Wow.
And so I had to sit with Tom and we had as a relationship, our communication. And I said, babe, I need to give you the space for you to mourn the wife you thought I was going to be. That's going to take process. What can I do to do that? Right. And so I, with respect, said, he's used to me taking care of him, putting his clothes out, cooking for him every day. And so there is a grief process when you lose someone, right? Those first moments where it's like you're surprised by all the changes.
Right.
So I said, babe, I need to give you the space to have this grieving process. So what does that look like? All right, I take care of you 7 days a week. So next week, babe, I'm going to take care of you 6 days a week. And then the following week, I'm only going to cook for you 5 days a week. And then the week after that, I'm only going to give you 4 days a week. And what ended up happening was I embraced that both of us were actually sad that we were giving up this part of our life. But we know our why because we knew we were going to do it to move forward to the life that we really wanted. And so giving yourself the space, Mel, right now to grieve all the things that are very true to you. But to have that why, which is where we started, but to make sure that the grief doesn't deter you from your why.
This is so beautiful. This is so beautiful. I can't tell you how much I've gotten out of this. I want to try to unpack it because I think it's so valuable what we've just discussed. And as somebody who has spent a lot of time running and a lot of time being faster. I mean, even just think about the 5-second rule. If I move faster than the anxiety, I won't be there when it hits.
Right.
But the problem that I faced, and it has worked for decades, but the problem that I've now faced in making this massive life-changing decision is that in those moments when you get the diagnosis or somebody that you love dies, or you make one of the major changes, your anxiety catches up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what's happened in this moment. And you've explained so beautifully and so simply how to practice this skill of radical confidence, particularly in these moments where doubt or fear or uncertainty take over. I want to try to summarize the steps to make sure that it's very clear, not only for me, forget about you guys. I want to make sure it's clear for me that first of all, it would be really smart of me to write down a long list of what I want in this next chapter of my life for real.
Yes.
And the why. And you explained that in the example around legacy. So if what I'm really after is more peace, a hell of a lot more fun, and a greater impact with more ease, I need to unpack what does that actually mean?
Yes.
And get very clear about the why. And I know that the why has to do with more time with family, more time with friends, more time and space to do bigger thinking instead of racing around being busy.
Yeah.
The second thing that I got out of this is very like radical. And that is when the fear or the anxiety or the worry or the self-doubt, that little, like, we're going to talk about the negative bitch first before we talk about the whisper. The negative bitch in your head is just your ego trying to protect you.
Yeah.
And so when that anxiety comes up, or I wake up and I feel like that hot lava on my neck and my thoughts start to swirl, don't try to outrun it. Face the bitch and be like, all right, bitch.
Yeah.
Oh, you think I'm gonna be lonely on a mountain because I'm lonely in suburbia? You think I'm not gonna have any friends there because I don't have friends here? Okay, you think I'm not gonna be successful doing it there because I'm not, like, oh, okay. And hear it. And then the way that you take the bitch and you flip her into your best friend is you say, what is this trying to warn me? What is this trying to coach me? What are the things that it's saying? Hey, if you're going to go do this, just know that you might feel lonely and that's okay. So what are you going to do about it? If you're going to go do this, just know that you should probably, reach out to friends that are doing podcasts from remote places. If you're going to do this, so that you know what steps to take. And it's in taking the steps forward to prepare for plan B.
Yeah.
So that you got a plan for when that stuff happens that is going to allow you to access the radical confidence, which feels radical in a moment where you're doubting yourself. And you just keep pushing forward and you do it over and over and over and over and over again. Because what's interesting is you also said this thing about the whisper, that the things that are meant for you and the things that are true begin as a whisper.
Mm-hmm.
And when you really start to hear the whisper, whether it's, I'm going to sign up for this program, even though it scares me, or I'm going to not have kids and sit down with my spouse, even though it scares me, or I'm going to, make a major life change and it scares me. As you start to hear the whisper, I think there's a pretty close period of time where that whisper turns into a fucking bitch.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, because she's like, hang on a minute, you're freaking ignoring me. Let me get my megaphone so that you don't.
Yes. Yeah. Wow.
And then that last piece is making sure that you understand your belief, why you feel the way you do actually, Mel, because you even said your parents never moved out of the house that you were born in, correct? Your grandparents never did. So you have it seems like a belief system that holding on to the house that maybe your kids were brought up in is something and I don't want to speak for you, but maybe something you feel like you should do, or maybe feel like it's something that you saw your parents do and now you're actually breaking that pattern. And for me, it was the same. My grandparents, my mom, everyone ended up like basically thinking that I would be this stay-at-home wife, or I would be a mother. And in order for me to listen to the silence and break that, I had to say, oh, it's because I believed that this was what was going to happen. I never questioned it. So I don't know if you've ever questioned whether the house that you're in, whether it should be something that you should be in for the rest of your life, or if it was just a belief system you hold on to.
It's just a belief system I hold on to. Like, I know, just like you knew, at some point that whisper became the truth for you.
Right, right.
I know that it's the truth. And everybody that knows me well is literally like, I thought you would have sold that house like years ago, because like with the amount of stuff you're doing and like, it just doesn't make sense for you to live there. And so like somebody else saw it in you. First.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes, exactly. And now, because
it's like, because when I talked to you, and I saw other friends of ours last week because they were visiting Boston, and I was sort of going like in the beginning of the freaking Crest downfall, and it was Joel, Marin, and Kat, and Kat looks at me and she's like, wait, are we really having this conversation? You're like worried about like some place in Vermont, whether you're going to live in an apartment, whether you're going to feel like you're Mel fucking Robbins. What the fuck? Like, and I'm like, you're right. I know how to do that. Why am I? Because I'm human, and because your ego comes in, and because if you keep running, this shit will catch up with you, which is why radical confidence is really about turning and facing it.
Yeah.
Instead of being afraid of it.
And then knowing that the path you choose to take in life will mean that you leave things behind. And that's where the mourning piece comes in. It's like, just because you're making a decision that's right for you shouldn't mean that you shouldn't embrace that you have to mourn the life that you're leaving behind, or the life you thought you were going to live. So maybe, Mel, for when you had your kids, and I again don't know, but maybe you're just like, this is the house that I'm going to bring them up in, and you've told yourself year after year after year that that's going to be the house. But now you've changed. Now your goals have changed. Now your life has changed. And now your reassessment of that isn't the same with a person who maybe first had those children.
Oh, I know what it is. You're giving me another breakthrough. Dude, I need to pay you for this.
Oh, I'm here for you. You're my bestie. You know that.
I literally feel like you just saved me. No offense to SSRIs, but I'm feeling like I'm like back. I'm feeling like the woman that crawled out of the crypt this morning, and my team had to like prop up and be like, oh God, Mel is not Mel today. That you have brought me back, woman. So I was walking with my husband, Chris, on the beach this morning. It was phenomenal to be able to take some time and just be in a quiet place. And my husband turned to me and said, geez, Mel, you are normally such a powerhouse. You are normally a woman on a mission. You have clarity. You are completely driven. You are so indecisive right now. Like, you are spinning like a top. Now, can you relate to this? Do you feel like you're more indecisive or overwhelmed than ever before? That is me right now. And I know why. The reason why I feel incredibly overwhelmed is because I have intentionally and strategically made the decision to launch an entirely new chapter. As of this morning, the home that Chris and I raised our kids in for 24 years, I have lived there almost half my life. I've lived there longer than anywhere else in the planet. We have put our amazing antique farmhouse on the market, hopefully for another amazing young family to come in and enjoy. I am making major changes in my business. I am looking to hire an executive producer for a new podcast that I am launching. We've not announced the partnership yet in terms of who's distributing it, but we're creating the whole thing in-house. Looking for studio. Like, I've just got all these exciting new things going on, big things. And I find that even when change is exciting, it's still scary. Even when you know that this big move that you want to make, this big goal that you want to achieve is something that you're meant to do. Even though you know it, it feels overwhelming. We found an incredible apartment in Boston and are negotiating right now a place. And I had nightmares last night about this apartment. Nightmares. Why? Well, because anything new, any change that you want to make is going to require you to literally end things in your old life. You see, I think that so many of us, there are two lives that we have. There's the life that you're currently living, and then there's the one that you're going to live next. Hello, whoever's flying that jet. I'm going to say that again. We all have two lives. The life you're currently living and the life you're going to launch next. And when you're in the middle of thinking about changes and making big changes in your life, I feel like it's almost like you're walking across a suspension bridge as you're building it. And so I have become so indecisive about everything. Like I noticed last night, I was trying to reach out to somebody that was recommended to me as a potential person to hire as an executive producer for this big podcast we're launching this fall in Boston. And I couldn't even get myself focused to write the email. Now, the reason why is because when you're on edge, when you're overwhelmed, when you feel stressed or scared about something, your nervous system kicks into a state of alert, and that impacts your brain's ability to focus. So what do you need when you feel that way? I'll tell you what you need. You need to hit the freaking reset button. You need to get your mindset back in check. You got to focus on the simple things that you can do every day to make yourself feel steady and secure and clear, even as everything is changing around you. Today, I want to introduce you to a Jedi mind trick that I use all the time whenever I have a really important decision to make, or I can feel that I'm starting to get really emotional about something. So what I want to teach you is the power of objectivity. Researchers at the University of Waterloo and the University of Michigan have studied how people make decisions, and they've discovered something really interesting. If your friend is facing a problem, when you have to make decisions on behalf of your friend, you tend to think from multiple perspectives, you think about multiple outcomes, and ultimately you make a much better decision. What they found in research, though, is if they put you in the exact same situation, facing the exact same thing that your friend is, you're not able to be so objective because you're emotional, and you don't make that great a decision. What's the conclusion? Well, when you make decisions for other people, you're great. When we make decisions for ourselves, decisions that can be emotional, we're not so good at it. That's where the power of objectivity comes in. It's the ability to make a decision from a third party's perspective. Let me explain. So if you're facing a really important decision and you can feel yourself getting emotional, maybe you're thinking about asking for a raise or changing your career or changing your major or ending a relationship or starting a relationship, whatever it may be. If it's something that is emotional for you, you're going to have a hard time thinking about all the options, and you're going to be really attached emotionally because maybe you're concerned about the people who may be impacted by your decision. Maybe you're managing that somebody's going to be disappointed or hurt by what you need to do for you. This is when the power of objectivity is really important. Pick somebody that you really admire. I mean, it could be somebody like a Bill Gates or a Richard Branson or an Oprah Winfrey, or maybe you have a mentor. And stop yourself and ask, what would Oprah do in this situation? What would Richard Branson do in this situation? What would your mentor do in this situation? Bringing that level of third-party objectivity will yank you out of your body and your emotions, and it will help you give yourself the perspective that you need and the distance from your emotions so that you can actually assess your options and make the best decision for you. What would Mel do if Mel were making the decision, the best decision? You know, there's a really interesting example of somebody who did this in sports, and at the time, he actually got a lot of flack for it. It was LeBron James. Now, LeBron James, as you know, played for the Cleveland Cavaliers for a really, really long time, and he's arguably one of the best basketball players to ever hit the NBA. So he made this announcement that he was going to leave the Cleveland Cavaliers, where he had been playing forever, had rabid fans, and he was going to leave them and go to Miami.
Miami Heat. That was the conclusion you woke up with this morning.
That was the conclusion I woke up with this morning.
He was giving an interview to ESPN, and what he said was this. He said, LeBron James needs to do what's best for LeBron James. Now, people kind of laughed at him because it's a funny way to say the sentence, but this guy's really smart. He was leveraging the power of objectivity. Mel Robbins needs to learn how to do what's best for Mel Robbins, and you need to learn how to do what's best for you. And your life, your work, it all comes back to the decisions that you make. So the next time that you're facing a really important decision, or you start to feel that you're getting wrapped around the axle because you're thinking about what everybody else is going to think or how this is going to impact people that you care about, stop. Take a step back, leverage the power of objectivity, and do what is actually best for you. If you want a different life, start making different decisions. Stop bitching about what's not working and get to work working on it to change it. You are in control of so much more than you are willing to admit. I'm not suggesting that it's easy to change your life. It takes time. It takes discipline. It takes commitment. It doesn't happen overnight. You got to fight for it. But you have a choice. Every morning when you wake up, you get this. You get a blank fucking page. You get to decide whether or not you're going to hit the snooze button 5 times and you're going to wake up a hot mess and you're going to make all the same decisions that you made today. Or you can decide that today is the day I am changing my fucking life, because I am changing the decisions and the patterns of behavior that I engage in. I am going to get up when the alarm rings. Instead of racing into my day late, I'm going to take a minute and make my bed, because that one small thing of getting up when the alarm rings and then taking a minute and making your bed so that you have one thing done, so that you have one less thing of clutter. And then I'm going to walk into my closet and pull on my exercise clothes, because damn it, I know I'm in a better mood when I take a walk outside.
Mm-hmm.
And once these clothes are on, it's one less thing that I need to do, and it's going to remind me. And then I'm going to walk into that bathroom, and I am going to brush my teeth, and then I'm going to high five myself, even though I hate what I look like, even though I don't like what I weigh, even though I have so many bills to pay that it's overwhelming. And I focus on the regrets, but I am going to high five myself because I am committed to silencing this shit in my head. I am tired of listening to my mother's voice. I'm tired of listening to my father's voice. If you want to change your life, you are going to have to fight like hand-to-hand combat all day long against the current patterns that you have that are making you miserable. And what are those patterns? Those patterns are criticizing yourself. Those patterns are focusing relentlessly on the things you're doing wrong or the one thing you didn't get to on your to-do list. Those patterns are picking yourself apart. Those patterns are focusing on the things that are in your way and complaining about the excuses. Those patterns are obsessing about the mistakes that you've made in the past. And what do you need to do to break these patterns? Well, by God, number one, you've got to stop labeling yourself, and you've got to start identifying, labeling the behavior that's making you feel broken. Number two, you need to start focusing on all of the amazing things you do right. You got up, you get a high five. You made your bed, you get a high five. You brushed your teeth, you get a high five. You slapped some yogurt on that counter and those kids slapped it. You get a high five, man. You let the dog out today. You get a high five. You responded to one text and what? You get a high five. You need to start to focus on everything that you're doing right. Another thing you need to do, you need to stop obsessing about the past and look ahead and figure out what you want the future to look like. Because your future will not be different unless you make it different. And finally, you have got to start celebrating, supporting, and encouraging the woman you see staring back at you every morning in the mirror. Changing your life is one of the most important and challenging and difficult and profound things that you could ever do. And nobody's going to do it for you. You got to make a decision that you deserve to be happy. You can change these patterns of behavior and thinking that make you feel broken. And it begins with how you treat the woman in the mirror. Any decision can be divided into what do I need to do versus how and when do I need to do it. For the what, that is intuition. And by intuition, I use the word energy. And the way to answer any question for yourself personally that you don't immediately know the answer to is to ask this question. Does it energize and expand my life, or does it shrink it? If it energizes and expands your life, the answer is hell yes. You should absolutely do it. That is what you should do. If the decision shrinks you or it deflates you, then the answer is hell no, you should not do it. This is an incredible tool to use in deal making, by the way, because I'm in the middle of negotiating a massive media deal at the moment, and it's something I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
And when you're negotiating for something you really want, whether it's somebody that you're dating or it's a salary or whatever, in my case it's a massive media deal, you can get really ego driven, right?
Right.
And you can start to get very attached to the deal or to the person or
Yeah.
to the whatever. But you have to stop and ask yourself, is this deal or this person actually expanding
Right.
and energizing me, or are there aspects of it that deplete and shrink me? And if there's any aspect of it that depletes and shrinks, you either have to change that aspect of the deal or the relationship structure, or you have to say no. Period.
Right.
If you decide that, yeah, it energizes me and I really want to do it, then that's what you want. Next, you've got to think about the outcome, which is how and when you make it happen. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for checking this video out. And if you like this one, I have a feeling you're going to like this one too. I'll see you there.